welcome back. So we're in Chapter 6, Lab Section 3. In this chapter, we're going to carry on what we have left over from the first book, Research from the Start to the End. In the first book, we have discussed two lab sections, and that is Lab Section 1 and then Lab Section 2. So if you have already enrolled in the first book material, you must be quite a bit familiar with the problem that we are about to do analysis for. In the first lab, established all the academic knowledge on research from design to framework to structure. And then in the second lab, we actually prepared data by measuring the values on the subject for the research using the instrument that we have already built. So by the end actually of lab number 2, we were able to see the full image or the complete image on the research problem from academic perspective and practical perspective. And we assume we have now a kind of a structured data set where the subject have already submitted their answers. And what we should do now on the third lab where we are right now is to take this data set. We do some work from the first pillar perspective, and that is to do some preparation such as make sure there's no missing, the data is clean, the structure is good, and then take it to the second pillar by creating the descriptive model. And from there, we can then move to the third pillar by creating the inferential model. In order to do that, maybe I'm going to take you over a quick review on the entire subject in the first book and the project itself. And then we will start the introduction on what are the steps we're going to do for explanatory data analysis or creating the descriptive model, and finally take you to the inferential analysis. So basically the problem was that there is a project called Learn Project, and it is kind of a government project was established in order to deliver a free vocational training to lifelong trainers. Then they discovered a problem of dropout among the participants, and then the entire research and the lab that we did in the first book was around how to investigate the problem and how to create the framework for such a research. We involve all the steps from the design to the structure to the instrument and how many instruments we needed and how we're going to collect them and everything. So basically the image was, maybe if you look down here, you can see these are 3 instruments we have been working on, depends on our analysis of creating the research. And as at the end, we were able to look at a comprehensive data set looks like this. It's one vector of one subject, whereby 2 important vectors here. One is the outcome of the instrument B, which is the teacher's score, and the other one is belong to the object scores. Actually, these number of variables that we see here from x1 to xm is grouped into 2 different variables, demographic variable and effective variable. We want to investigate, do they have effect on the decisions of a lifelong learner to drop out a lifelong training course? This is what we want to find out. The second research question was, we wanted to figure out whether those number of variables collectively, subgroup, or individually can be predictive to the decision of dropping out the course. Basically, in the analysis part, we might give an answer for this, but the actual model will be the focus of our next book, and that's prediction from the start to the end. So this is our target. This is what we want actually to accomplish now. First, we need to create a descriptive model to deliver answers, back up that by inferential model to say that our finding, it's not by chance, but it's population representative. Now, to this end, we wanted to make things formal by forming actually the research hypothesis. If you have already completed the first book, Research from the Start to the End, you might find different in the way I formed the null hypothesis against the alternative hypothesis. Previously, I was saying that whatever claim that we have, once it goes to hypothesis, I assume this hypothesis to be already a null hypothesis. But that was from research perspective. It was just like to deliver the link between a claim and hypothesis. But since now we have accomplished all the analysis steps, we must be quite a bit more sensitive towards the terminology, since we know the difference between the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis from inferential perspective, that the null hypothesis is always about the equality, either with large or small, but the alternative is about the non-equality with large or small only. So to this end, what we want to say here, that our null hypothesis, the demographic and affecting variables collectively or subgroup would have no effect whatsoever. So the subject, they don't differ at all in terms of these. So the equality is there. All of them are equal in terms of these variables. This is the actual core perceptions of null hypothesis, right? And the alternative hypothesis already, of course, it could be the opposite, that the demographic and effective variables collectively or subgroup have an effect. They are different. So the subjects are different in terms of the measure of those variables. Now, for more details on, for example, how did we get to this design, you might want to check out the first details of the book and the lab 1 and lab 2 where you have accomplished. Now, in the next step, we shall be looking at the EDA, or explanatory data analysis, that involve actually the last step of pillar 1, where we prepare the data and everything, and now the focus of pillar 2, where we're going to do the univariate, the bivariate, the multivariate analysis. So we're going to basically look at the organizing, cleaning, the missing everything from pillar 1, and then we create the descriptive model as a pillar 2. And finally, once we come up with a result and inferential something, and we say something about what we have, and we deliver answers to research question, we will be able to use the inferential idea of analysis to explore the sample and determine the estimate and test the hypothesis whether our descriptive model makes sense from the population perspective, but not only from the sample that we have at hand. Now, next I'm gonna use again Jamovie, open source, but this time we will explore extra features on Jamovie, such as like we will bring the data set and you will see there are some answers. We need to collect scores first of all. For example, we have like the motivation. We need to measure the motivation, which had been established through a number of statements. So that's exactly what we shall do next. I will see you then.